Translator, Salavan and Rykov. Translation checker, Pew Pew Laser Gun. Editor and proofreader, Leo of Zion Mountain and Dale Ligerkeys. Yang Kai found a seat on the third floor and asked for a good pot of spirit tea before sitting quietly, listening to the conversations between the guests in the tea house. The cultivators patronizing the tea house were of varying cultivations, but the information that they were inadvertently revealing during their idle conversations was exactly what Yang Kai needed. After sitting in the tea house for most of the day, the patrons around him came and went, but Yang Kai did not move at all. He really did hear a lot of useful information. Unfortunately, nobody was talking about the Netherworld sect, to his disappointment. He thought to himself that if he wanted to get information about the Netherworld sect, then he probably needed to enter the Eastern Territory first. Just as Yang Kai was about to leave, a sudden and rather strong surge of energy emerged not far away on the opposite side of the street. Someone seemed to be fighting. Yang Kai was not surprised by this, as law and order in Marsh City was in complete chaos, so fights happened from time to time. But this didn't matter to him as long as he wasn't targeted by anyone. The fluctuation happened quickly, but also dissipated quickly. The disparity in strength between both sides seemed quite large. Following that, a delicate figure was kicked out from a medicine store on the opposite side. This figure spat out a mouthful of blood while in midair and landed heavily on the ground. Then, they did not get up for a long time. It seemed their injuries were quite severe. A burly, bald-headed man came out from the medicine store soon after, bellowing, "Bitch, you dare to cause trouble at my Endless Treasures Pavilion. This is just a warning, if I see you again, I'll kill you. Now scram." After he finished shouting, the large man glared at the woman sitting on the ground with contempt before walking back into the store. All the cultivators who walked past seemed to be used to this sight, and nobody went over to show pity for the battered woman. They just thought that she was unlucky to actually have had the guts to start trouble in the Endless Treasures Pavilion, as if the word death didn't exist in her dictionary. Yang Kai didn't intend to stick his nose in someone else's business, but when he took a casual glance at the woman's face, he couldn't help but feel surprised. Xian Yun. That woman actually turned out to be Lu Xian Yun. That same Lu Xian Yun who came with Yin Le Sheng from the Grand Desolation Starfield. Back then, he and Lu Xian Yun were forced into joining Blue Feather Sect, so they could be considered friends going through the same difficulties. After that, when they escaped the large and ruthless massacre in Blue Feather Sect, Yang Kai was worried that he would drag Lu Xian Yun into his problems, so he parted ways with her after they escaped. A few years had passed, and Yang Kai had not expected to meet Lu Xian Yun again, let alone at the border of the Southern Territory. Only, it seemed that Lu Xian Yun wasn't in the best situation right now. She was only at the First Order Dao Source Realm cultivation and her aura was unstable, clearly having advanced not long ago, the same as Chi Yue and the others. With her injuries from that burly bald-headed man, she was in a pitiful state. Her white clothes were stained red with blood, with a rather striking blotch on her chest. During their days in Blue Feather Sect, Yang Kai and Lu Xian Yun supported each other and formed a friendship. Now that he saw her being bullied by someone, Yang Kai naturally could not sit idly by and do nothing. As that thought flashed through his mind, Yang Kai had already leapt down from the third floor, landing lightly next to Lu Xian Yun and reaching out towards her. Seemingly able to feel that someone was reaching for her, Lu Xian Yun's face changed and instantly swung her hand towards Yang Kai. "Xian Yun, it's me," Yang Kai shouted. Palm stopping in midair, Lu Xian Yun's tender body trembled. She turned in surprise towards Yang Kai, and when she saw his face, surprise and joy filled her beautiful eyes in an instant. "Senior brother Yang." Both of them entered the Blue Feather Sect at the same time, even if they were forced to do so, so they were indeed considered senior brother and junior sister. Yang Kai smiled at her. The world really is filled with coincidences. "Senior brother Yang, why are you here?" Lu Xian Yun seemed to have forgotten the bullying she received after seeing Yang Kai. She was beaming, and it could be seen that her joy was genuine and came from deep within. During their time in Blue Feather Sect, Yang Kai had been very kind to her and also gave her many of the source crystals he earned from refining spirit pills for people. Unfortunately, she wasn't able to meet someone else as nice as him after parting ways with Yang Kai. For Lu Xian Yun, her best days in the Star Boundary were during their time in the Blue Feather Sect. "I just happened to pass by, but we can reminisce about old times later." "What happened to you?" Yang Kai asked. Lu Xian Yun's eyes flashed as she tried her best to smile. "It's nothing, senior brother. Let's find a place to sit down before we talk." Yang Kai responded, "How could it be nothing after you were hit this hard?" "It's really nothing, just a little misunderstanding." No need to worry about it, senior brother. Lu Xianyun was insistent. She was clearly worried that she would involve Yang Kai in her problems, that's why she wanted to just leave things be and not make a big deal out of it. She had been in Marsh City for quite a while now and naturally knew how chaotic things were here. She also knew who the one behind this endless treasures pavilion was. Back then, when they parted, both she and Yang Kai were third-order origin kings, so no matter how good Yang Kai's aptitude was, it would be impossible for him to grow too strong. Right now, he would at most be at the same level of cultivation as her, so causing trouble here would be the same as courting death. As she spoke, she took Yang Kai's arm, intending to take him away from here. But Yang Kai was unmoved and was persistent to stay. If you still consider me your senior brother, then tell me what happened. A little endless treasures pavilion is nothing in your senior brother's eyes. That wasn't just an unfounded opinion. Earlier, while he was drinking tea at the tea house, Yang Kai overheard that there was only a single Emperor Realm Master in Marsh City, and that was Marsh City's City Lord, who was only a first-order emperor. With just one master like that, Yang Kai really didn't have anything to be afraid of. No matter who it was behind this endless treasures pavilion, they couldn't be more powerful than the City Lord. With his current strength, Yang Kai could definitely take on a first-order Emperor Realm Master, and that was without even counting Liu Yan and Xiao Bai. If Xiao Bai were to fully display his strength, he would also be at the level of a first-order emperor. Yang Kai was prepared to ignore Marsh City's City Lord, but if the latter did end up provoking him, Yang Kai didn't mind turning the entire city upside down. Lu Xianyun was stunned in place as she stared at Yang Kai in astonishment, wondering where he had gotten his confidence from. At that moment, she thought of checking Yang Kai's cultivation, but when her divine sense swept over him, she was shocked to find that the aura inside Yang Kai's body turned out to be a blur. In other words, she couldn't see how strong Yang Kai was. Lu Xianyun was completely dumbfounded. When she parted ways with Yang Kai, both of them had similar cultivations. They had only parted for a few years, but now she couldn't even detect Yang Kai's cultivation, which showed how great the disparity between them was. Rest assured, I won't do anything rash, but I have to stand up for you regardless. Yang Kai smiled. Lu Xianyun pursed her red lips. She knew she should refuse Yang Kai's offer, but she still felt touched, so she explained, I came here to sell something, but the price the Endless Treasures Pavilion offered me was too low. I didn't want to sell, but they forced me to sell no matter what. They're snatching things by force. How dare they? Yang Kai's face sank as he asked, what were you trying to sell? I'm not sure either. It was a spirit flower that I came across by chance. Lu Xianyun looked ashamed. She didn't even know what she was selling, she just thought that the price the Endless Treasures Pavilion gave her was too low, so she wasn't willing to sell it. But she didn't expect that they wouldn't return the item at all, and when she argued with him, they ended up attacking her directly and throwing her out. What price did they offer you? 10,000 low-rank source crystals, Lu Xianyun said softly. Yang Kai nodded, come with me. Then, he brought Lu Xianyun into the Endless Treasures Pavilion. After the two of them stepped into Endless Treasures Pavilion, the young shop hand at the counter immediately came over to greet them with enthusiasm, but once he saw Lu Xianyun next to Yang Kai, the smile on his face disappeared. He looked coldly at Lu Xianyun and snapped, why are you here again, you tramp? The boy seemed to only be a first-order origin king, but he wasn't pressured at all in front of a first-order Dao Source realm cultivator like Lu Xianyun. Instead, he cursed her directly, obviously not putting her in his eyes thanks to his background. After scolding her, he sneered contemptuously at Yang Kai, and you even brought your toy over. You clearly have a death wish. Pa. A crisp sound rang out as soon as the boy finished speaking as Yang Kai sent a slap across his face. For someone whose cultivation was so far below Yang Kai's, how could he avoid that slap? The shop hand didn't even realize what had happened when he felt the huge sting on his cheek, sending his entire person flying. While his body was still in midair, several more consecutive hits rang out. Yang Kai was chasing him over with one slap after another. He could tell at a glance that this boy was a bully who looked down on others by using his background, cursing others without even a blink. How could Yang Kai give him any face? After sending out a dozen slaps, even though Yang Kai did not use much strength, the shop handballed was still left dizzy. After he landed on the ground, he spat out a mouthful of blood. Even his teeth had all been beaten off his mouth. When Yang Kai struck the boy, the cultivators walking past Endless Treasures Pavilion had all seen it, and they were all dumbfounded, looking inside in astonishment, thinking, what sort of idiot dares to hit anyone in the Endless Treasures Pavilion? They probably won't get to see the sun tomorrow anymore. It was human nature for people to gather and watch when something interesting happened, so many cultivators appeared in front of Endless Treasure Pavilion's door in an instant. All of them were looking in to see how Yang Kai and his company would end up dead. Lu Xianyun was also stunned. Even though Yang Kai just told her that the Endless Treasures Pavilion was nothing to him, and she also knew that Yang Kai's strength was definitely not bad, she didn't expect him to start hitting someone as soon as he walked in. If she had known this would happen, then Lu Xianyun would never have let Yang Kai come here no matter what. Even if the one Yang Kai had beaten was just a young servant manning the counter, he belonged to Endless Treasures Pavilion in the end. For him to be slapped more than a dozen times across the face in front of the public was no different than Yang Kai slapping the face of Endless Treasures Pavilion. And how could Endless Treasures Pavilion just take this sitting down? Instantly, Lu Xianyun became as anxious as an ant on a hot wok. She felt that she had dragged Yang Kai into trouble and felt guilty. All she wanted to do now was drag Yang Kai out of here, the further the better. Seemingly able to sense her unease, Yang Kai reached his hand out to squeeze her palm, smiling, "Don't worry, senior brother can handle it." Lu Xianyun looked at his bright and confident smile in a daze. For some reason, her heart settled down in an instant.